Hey guys, today I want to talk to you a little bit about the shoulder joint, which is one of my favorite joints to treat because it is, there's so much going on and there's so many different ways that we can help improve shoulder function that a lot of people are typically limited with. It's the most mobile joint in the body. We can do all sorts of movements with our shoulder that no other joint really moves quite like the shoulder. The hip would probably be the closest in our body. But this is a shoulder model. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about shoulder anatomy and function. So this is a right shoulder. This is the shoulder blade or scapula, humerus or upper arm bone, clavicle or collarbone. So there's a lot of different joints that make up the shoulder complex. So what everyone thinks about as the shoulder joint is the glenohumeral joint, the ball and socket. You've got scapulothoracic joint where the shoulder blade rotates on the rib cage. You actually get a third of your shoulder elevation motion from the shoulder blade rotating upward. So you get the other 2/3 from the ball and socket. So as you rotate or elevate the arm up, this type of a motion happens. And then you have your acromioclavicular joint. That's a mouthful, say it 5 times fast, which is this joint right here. It's the one where the clavicle or collarbone meets the acromion process or a bony projection off the shoulder blade. So there's a lot of different things that contribute to how a shoulder functions. So it's kind of this balance between active and passive structures. So passive structures mean, what do your bones look like? What's the bony surface look like? What kind of ligamentous support does it have? And then you have active support. So this has to do with all of the things that move us, our muscles. So we have an important group of muscles in the shoulder called your rotator cuff muscles, and they surround this ball and socket joint and give us that stability. As you can see here, a lot of people, so when you think ball and socket, I usually do this when I'm describing it to people. It's a ball and socket, but this is not like the shoulder joint. It's actually more like this. And if you look at this model and look at this ball and socket here, you can see just how shallow that joint is, which is really kind of amazing that we can do what we can do with our shoulders given its structure. So the rotator cuff muscles play a huge role in stabilization of the shoulder. They keep that ball in that socket, initiate elevation. They do a lot of important things that allow us to move in the dynamic ways that we move through our shoulder. The other group of muscles that are really important are the ones that attach to and control the scapula or shoulder blade. So we have a lot of different muscles like our trapezius muscle, our rhomboid, serratus anterior, a lot of big muscle names. It doesn't really matter, but it's just, they control how the shoulder blade moves on your rib cage, which, like we talked about earlier, is a huge part of your shoulder stabilization and movement up overhead. Another thing we have to consider is, what does your spine motion look like? So thoracic spine is the mid-back or the hump of the mid-back, basically in between my hands approximately, so below the neck, above the low back. It's the vertebrae that our ribs attach to. So how we move in our thoracic spine really impacts how our shoulder functions. So a quick, simple way I'll explain this to patients is go ahead and slump and then try to elevate your shoulder up as high as you can. Well, you can't really elevate it very well because you don't have good extension. Lots of people lose their thoracic extension, which is very important once again because that shoulder blade rotates on that rib cage. So if you're lacking extension in your thoracic spine, it's going to impact your overhead mobility. So another quick test I'll do with people is an overhead reach. So it's the shoulder joint, once again, it's dynamic. So there's a lot of different things that impact your mobility in the shoulder, and mobility is one of them. So your range of motion, your flexibility, how much mobility your joint capsule has, all impacts how your shoulder can move and function. So a quick test is the overhead reach. Reach your arms up overhead. Can you get to this position? Are we stuck here? Are your arms winging out? these are all indicators that you have some type of mobility restriction, whether it's coming from the shoulder joint itself, or if you have a tightness or a muscle flexibility restriction in one of your muscles, like your lats or your pecs, that once again can impact your overhead positioning. So we've talked a little bit about the muscle function, so how the rotator cuff muscles and the scapular muscles help promote that nice normal movement of the shoulder complex, but also mobility plays a role. So your range of motion and your muscle flexibility, anything that's crossing over the shoulder can impact how it functions. And sometimes not even crossing the joint can make a big difference, but we won't get into that right now. That's a whole nother ball game. And then we have to think about motor control. So when you are stepping up to that bar, or you're getting ready to do a push-up, something like that, what kind of muscular activation do you have? What kind of movement patterns do you have? Many times I see people who, once again, just don't know how to stabilize their shoulder in a good position for pressing, for instance. So I see people that cave in, kind of round out and roll forward their shoulder. Sometimes one simple thing that people just need to do is activate their muscles before they're doing the movement. So for instance, if you have pain with push-ups, you get down into that push-up position. Is your shoulder in that tucked back stable position? Ears, your shoulders tucked down away from your ears, or are you letting them kind of round out, which anytime that we're rounding or coming forward into internal rotation, it just is not good positioning for your shoulder. It's not a strong position for the shoulder because of our shoulder anatomy. So you can see at this, on this shoulder model, this small little hole here is where one of the rotator cuff muscles travels through. It's your supraspinatus. It attaches on the top back part of the shoulder blade, travels through this small space here, and then attaches on the upper arm bone or humerus. When we internally rotate, so this is internal rotation of the shoulder, you're closing down the space that muscle has to pass through when you're doing that. So it's just not, it's you know, an important motion of the shoulder, but it's not a strong position that you want to be doing things like you don't want to be pressing with shoulder internal rotation. So try this, you know, get in your push-up position, tuck your shoulders down and back away from your ears, get your hands on the ground, and then not actually moving your arms or hands, but imagine that you're twisting your hands into the ground, twisting apart. And you will feel some of the muscles activate in your shoulder, which is going to keep you in a more stable position. So do that. Once again, you're not actually moving the hands, they're going to stay still. You're just going to twist your hands into the ground to activate some of the shoulder and back muscles to keep you in a strong, stable position when you're doing any type of movement. So like a push-up. You could do the same thing when you're doing a bench press. So act like you're twisting the bar apart to get your shoulders activated. Give that one a little try. I once again, love treating the shoulder joint. It's a really fun joint to treat because there's so much going on, which to me is really cool because there's so many different things that we can address that's gonna help get you from A to B. I kind of look at it from basically different points that we wanna get to. So we gotta get mobility back. You gotta get your range of motion back, your flexibility back, your capsular mobility back so that you can even just move. You're not gonna be strong through, you know, the movement if you can't even move through it. So it doesn't allow for good mechanics. You gotta get your mobility back. So getting things activated. So, you know, we tend to work a lot of the big muscles like our pecs and our lats, our deltoids. So sometimes we need to give a little TLC to the small stabilizers. So the rotator cuff muscles, doing exercises to kind of tune them up, keep them strong, keep them activated during these movements. And it literally can make all the difference between really limited and painful pressing to getting back to making new PRs up overhead, feeling stable with things like a snatch or an overhead squat, even just push-ups. So, you know, reach out to me if you're having trouble with anything. I would love to learn more about what you're working through. what your goals are, how long it's been going on, give me a call and let's get to work, because it's just simple little things that you need to do that are really stopping you from getting from A to B. And there's no reason that you need to struggle with those things when the body is resilient and adaptable. Given the right stimulus, you can make a huge difference in how you move and how you function. Have a good rest of your day. Hope you found this video valuable.